Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we have absolutely massive news that Zelensky has officially fired the Ukrainian general Zylinskis. And we've sort of known this was coming for about 2 months now. There's been rumblings in the background that Zylinskis was on the way out, and we're really not exactly sure what the exact reason was for his firing. But publicly, we're being told that there was a disagreement about the strategy and that maybe Zylinskis was not willing to bend to Zelensky's will, and maybe that was the main reason for the firing. But nonetheless, this is very big news, and let's sort of jump into what President Zelensky is saying himself, and he actually posted a post on Twitter, or X, and told us what he thinks. He says he met with the General Valery Zylinskis. He thanked him for the 2 years of defending Ukraine. He discussed the renewal of the armed forces that the Ukrainians require, and he also discussed who could be a part of the renewed leadership of the armed forces of Ukraine, and he says that a time for renewal is now, and he also proposes that Zylinskis remain part of the team, and we're really not sure what that means at this point, and Zelensky once again reiterates that Ukraine will definitely win. It's a little bit of a confusing post because Zylinskis has been officially sacked. And he's been sacked for somewhat negative reasons, so he's not exactly in the good graces here, but Zelensky is portraying the image that everything's just fine, as you can see in this photo here. This was taken at the meeting that Zelensky and Zylinskis had, and you can see here they both are smiling, and it appears they're putting forth the image that everything is okay. There are no bad terms or bad blood here. I'm sure it's a little bit tense behind the scenes, but I'm glad to see there are really no public hard feelings at least, and that it seems to be a mutual professional understanding. But on this part about Zylinskis remaining part of the team, I'm not exactly sure if Zelensky really intends to put him in a smaller role than he typically held. That would seem a little bit odd to me. By the way, we already have learned of Zylinskis' replacement, which we'll get into in the next post. But overall, a little bit confusing to me, if I'm being perfectly honest, but let me know your comments or your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll be curious to see what y'all say about this as well. But moving on to our next post here, we have this one, which is from us, @the Enforcer on Twitter, and it says, Alexander Syrskyi has been named the new Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And even though a lot of you are not going to know a whole lot about this fella here, he was one of the people that were rumored to be on the list of, or actually the short list of candidates to replace Zylinskis. It was between Syrskyi mainly and also Budanov. Budanov, being the intel chief, was definitely really not suited for this position, so he kind of got, I guess, wiped off the list, and it was basically left down to Syrskyi. There's really nobody else to pick. So Syrskyi does have a background, which we'll get into in a moment, but he's not really publicly well known. A lot of people do not recognize his face. They don't really recognize his name either, but those in the Ukrainian military are well aware of who he is, and he does have a pretty successful track record, although there is a little bit of a mixed review on him as well, which we'll get into also in just a moment. But nonetheless, we're moving on to our next post here, which tells us a little bit about whether or not Syrskyi was really up to or willing to accept the job itself. It says that reports indicate that Alexander Syrskyi was previously offered the job of replacing Zylinskis as commander of the armed forces, but he previously declined that offer back in January of this year. So clearly something happened in the last month or so, month and a half, that has caused Syrskyi to do a complete 180 from refusing Zylinskis' offer and his requests to take this position and replace Zylinskis. He's done a 180, so I'm not sure what was offered to him in the background or what was discussed to lead him to that point, but clearly Zylinskis had been doing some persuading behind the scenes to get him to take it, because this was not Syrskyi's first inclination to take. And to me, that strikes me as a little bit concerning as well, because if he's really not wanting the job, at least he wasn't a month and a half ago, is he really going to be as effective as Zylinskis was, even with the perceived not-so-great strategy? That's going to be a concern to me, at least, to see how this is going to turn out on that front. And moving on to our next post here, we have another one. We actually have an article from the Washington Post, which tells us a little bit about Syrskyi and his background as well. So as we can see from the headline right here, it says Zylinskis' new military chief has played key roles in big Ukraine wins, including Kyiv's defense. And that is true. He's been behind the scenes mainly, so you haven't heard publicly about it a whole bunch, but he was involved in some very key battles here. And as we can see in the article, it says that Syrskyi, who has been the commander of Ukraine's ground forces, takes over the job at a very challenging time indeed. And it says here that Syrskyi was hardly a surprise, and also I mentioned that myself, it was somewhat expected, although, you know, it was kind of up in the air for a little while there. But we see here that Syrskyi is credited with initially organizing the defense of Kyiv in February of 2022, when many in Ukraine still rejected Western warnings that a Russian attack seemed imminent. He was also bestowed several awards as well, including the Hero of Ukraine Award, which is the country's highest honor. He's also been highly decorated. In fact, I've seen some reports saying that he's even more highly decorated than Zaluzhny himself. He also appears to be a favorite of the office of the President of Ukraine. He has received a lot of good comments and good graces of that office, and he appears to be a favorite. And it also says another big win for Syrskyi was him orchestrating the counteroffensive in the Kharkiv region, which was the most significant Ukrainian victory in the war, at least according to the Washington Post here, and I would tend to agree with that. So he clearly has a track record. He's not totally, in the dark here. He knows what he's doing, but that doesn't mean necessarily that the soldiers who he would be commanding necessarily want him there, or they put their faith in him. Now, over time, I'm sure that Syrskyi will prove himself. I don't want to start off by putting the guy, in a bad light, because we don't know much about him. But that is what's causing some people concern, is that lack of information. But I'm confident that Zylinskis has picked a good pick here and that he'll turn out to be a very good one. I'm just not sure if it's going to be a good thing right now, because Zaluzhny already had all that experience and knowledge at his disposal, and Syrskyi's going to have a little bit probably of a training curve or a little bit of a learning curve. Because now he's in a whole different role that carries a lot of different responsibilities with it, and it's definitely not to be taken lightly. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right into our next piece here, which is actually Oleksandr Syrskyi's Wikipedia page, because like I said, we don't have much information on him, so Wikipedia is about all we have at the moment. And we can see here that he holds the rank of Colonel General, which we did go over just a moment ago, and curiously enough, he was actually born in Russia, then in the Soviet Union. He graduated from the Moscow Higher Military Command School, which is the Soviet Union's leading higher military educational institution. And he also served as a self-propelled artillery unit equipped with the peon, actually. So he was a peon operator at some point. And he also basically served as a lower-level military officer or a soldier. So he has definitely paid his dues. He's not just someone who became an officer and just ran in there. That is promising indeed. And also here we have a little bit of detailing of the stuff we just went over in that Washington Post article. But as you can see, even the Wikipedia page is not very long. We don't know very much about him. We do know his age. He's 58 years old, but that's about all we know extra, and that's going to have to be all we know for now until some more information comes out. But with that, we have one more story to cover in the short war summary, and we see here a post from the Kyiv Post. This is very good news. We're learning that the U.S. Senate has approved a bill for $95 billion in financial aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. This is a big win right here. Obviously, it still has to go, I believe, through the House. So there is an extra step to go through, but I am feeling pretty good about this passing. And now, obviously, that's not a guarantee it's going to pass, because you don't know what's happening because it's politics, and we don't get too deep into that. But if this does pass, $95 billion, it is spread between Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. But right now, there's been a huge holdup with aid going to Ukraine, and any aid at this point is going to be a huge, huge advantage to Zylinskis and also his armed forces to make sure he can ward off the Russian threat and not let them gain any more territory. So with that, that is our last piece of news for the day. I hope you've enjoyed the short war summary. We're getting back in the swing of them, making it a routine again. And once again, hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well, because it helps us out significantly. And we'll see you all in the next one. And bye-bye for now.